Join us for Travel with Rick Steves, Saturday afternoons at 1 on KSJE.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Eleven minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, June the 3rd. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE, 90.9 FM over the air here in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in Durango, Colorado. Also, welcome to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program, streaming live to the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. Welcome aboard. We're glad that you are with us, everybody. Coming up this morning on the program in the next few moments, my guest today, District Attorney Rick Tedrow, is here. He'll be talking with me a little bit about the job that he does, and that is coming up in the next few moments, so stay tuned for that. Then later on, we'll be talking with Dr. Mike Hadabaugh from the Encouragement Lab. He joins us with some words of encouragement every Wednesday. This week, his message is to listen to the shy voices during these very strange times. So we'll hear more about that coming up today at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE. 9 o'clock, it's our local information program about the coronavirus. It is broadcast live on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Megan Cullip will be joining me live at 9 a.m. today. We'll talk about increased testing with guests from the Department of Health. We'll also be getting an update from San Juan County's Devin Neely on the program today at 9. It's rebroadcast on the radio every afternoon at 5:06 p.m. here on KSJE, and it's also rebroadcast at noon every day on our partner radio station, KNMI, Vertical Radio. We appreciate their support to do that. On the radio at 9, though, it's our classical music program, Roving with the Arts, and today, Mick Hess is playing Mahler's Sixth Symphony. You'll hear that today at 9:06, a special 90-minute version of Roving with the Arts on Wednesdays, of course. That takes us to 10:30, right on Four Corners, our local and regional author program. Tracy Hales-Vass is speaking with author E.J. Randolph about her latest book called The Ambassador Calls Twice. You'll hear that interview today at 10:30 on KSJE, so join us for that. Also, don't forget, you can connect with us on Twitter and on Instagram if you're not a Facebook or a YouTube person. And our weather forecast is calling for a mostly sunny day today, maybe some increasing clouds in the afternoon like we have seen. 92 for a high in Farmington today, 56 and clear overnight. Mostly sunny skies tomorrow with a high of 93 and a low of 57. Maybe some more increasing clouds and a chance of a scattered shower or thunderstorm on Friday and Saturday. The high on Friday, 95 degrees, but cooler on Saturday with a high of 85, and sunshine with a high of 84 on Sunday. Well, let me turn to my guest, who is here with me this morning. The District Attorney for the 11th Judicial District, Rick Tedrow, is here in the studio with me. Mr. Tedrow, good morning.
Well, good morning, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to come see you.
Good to have you here, and I appreciate you being here. And I guess congratulations are in order because you are victorious from the New Mexico primary that was held yesterday.
Yes, it was close up to the end, but I pulled it off just at the end.
I'm only laughing because he was running unopposed, everybody. And so, and you're also unopposed in the fall. So yes. I think it goes without saying that you will continue on your job as a district attorney.
Another 4 years.
Yes. So good for you, I think.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's, I always tell people it's the best job I've ever had. So.
Well, very good. Now let's talk about that job, and that's the reason I wanted to invite you on the program a little bit, because I know there's been some concerns about some legislation that's been passed recently in New Mexico about bail and bonding and things like that for some of the folks that are involved in some criminal cases and not so criminal cases and things along that line. You're seeing, we were talking before we came on the air this morning, that the caseloads and the types of cases are fairly the same. We haven't seen a lot of changes necessarily over the years, right? Are we still seeing a lot of drugs and DUIs and DWIs and domestic violence? Would that be the things that keep your folks most busy?
That's the volume that we have. The drug cases, the domestic violence or DVs, and then the DWIs. That's our real big volume area in our office. Where we're seeing an uptick is a direct correlation to the bail and bond issues that we've been dealing with since really 2014.
Okay.
That's where we really see it. We're seeing a lot of what we'd call 403, 409 motions. And what that refers to is the rules of procedure. And so when we say a 403, that's the number it was given. Rule 4-403
right.
or this.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is when people are out, so they'll
get arrested.
They'll get arrested.
And then I see a judge, and the
judge
puts a bond on my case, right?
Or not even a bond. Most of the time, it's just going to be a conditions of release.
I see.
And so, a lot of people sometimes, they're really hammering on the judges. And that's not the right avenue to hammer on. The judges have to follow the rules just like everybody else. And so the rules basically say, unless we as the district attorney's office can show that there is no other way, and I mean it flat out says no other way to make sure that this person appears, then they're going to be released. And that's where the judge's hands are tied. That's where our hands are tied, is because if I got to show there's no other way, there's always somebody that can throw something out there that says, well, how about this? What if we put them on house arrest? Or what if they wear an ankle monitor? Or what if, so it's a real hard burden to prove.
I see.
And so what we're seeing is a lot of people are getting out and either reoffending while they're out, or they'll see the violations to the conditions that they were out on. And so what it's really done is it's really increased our time in court for those type of things.
Before you even get to the prosecution of the original crime, I guess is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right? You're dealing with all this other stuff leading up to it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And it is, so now our focus is turned to these things that happen daily instead of being able to sit there and say, okay, this case will go to trial about 4 months down the road. Can we work on, instead of us being able to work on that, it's like a daily thing that we're in. We're in Monday through Thursdays having what we'll call detention hearings, twice a day.
About this type of thing.
Yes.
Gotcha. So, and I know the folks behind that legislation, as well-meaning as they are, the idea was that maybe some folks that didn't have maybe some of the monetary means were being maybe held because they had no other option. Yes. So they would end up in jail. And the idea was, since they really haven't been convicted of anything, they should be allowed to be released until their court case. And so that was the intent of the legislation.
Correct, Scott, and it's actually good legislation. The concept behind it is correct. I mean, we operate in an innocent until proven guilty world, and rightfully so. That's where we should operate. It's not bad, the concept at all. Right now, what's happening is, and it's gotten better, is we're working through the rules. It's like anything else. When you take something new, like they did with the bond and bail reform, there's no rules to back it. So nobody knew what should be going on, what they should be doing, how they should be doing it. So, we've had a good solid 3 years now to start working through it, and it's starting to work itself out. There needs to be some tweaks to the law, but it's worked itself out just through experience, I guess is the best way to say it.
Not as problematic as it was first out of the gate, I guess. Because we were hearing a lot of complaints and concerns early on, like 3 years ago.
Exactly. So it started to work itself out. I mean, I think both sides are realizing, when I say both sides, defense and prosecution and the courts, they're starting to realize, okay, this falls into this category, this falls into this category. So it has, but it's like anything else, businesses, corporations, they've learned to adapt on the fly. And something happens today, they can make a change tomorrow. When it comes to our government, our government's always lacking, because if you take the state of New Mexico, we change laws once a year. So usually in February and March during the session, goes into effect anywhere between May and July. So, I mean, you can have an 18-month window. We can use the COVID as an example. Any
Right.
changes that we see now aren't going to be effective. It's not like we can sit there and say, okay, they're effective tomorrow.
Right.
We're going to have that little drag time. And so, that's sort of what's going on with that process is it's gotten better, but it's gotten better through practice, not through exact changes in laws.
Gotcha. Okay. And you brought up COVID, so I think we should talk about that
Oh.
because a lot of folks may be wondering, how do you prosecute cases in a pandemic? And we have heard that the courts are reopening slowly for things like jury trials and things like that. And certainly, people didn't stop breaking the law in the last 3 months or so. And so folks still had to go before a judge or still get arrested and go through all these steps that we're talking about.
It's been interesting.
I bet.
That's the word I can use. Yeah, the courts haven't closed.
Right.
The courts are still doing stuff. The prosecutor's office hasn't closed. We've made a lot of modifications. I hate to say we've closed to the public, but we've really limited our public access.
Sure.
Same with the public defender's office, same with criminal defense attorneys, and same with the courts. So what we've really seen is there was the Supreme Court put out an order and said no jury trials. And I understand that to do a jury, we're calling a jury panel, which could be 100 people.
Right.
Then we're narrowing it down to the 15 that are going to be on there. And then,
I remember.
there-
I've been.
Yeah.
I know.
And
you kind of feel like you're herded around, and you're in a group of large people.
Exactly.
And it's hard to physically distance yourself during these times.
Plus, we're bringing in victims, and
Yeah.
sometimes we're bringing in victims. I mean, we're a border county, so I may have victims that are coming in from Colorado, from Utah, from Arizona. Lord forbid we're bringing in experts.
Right.
A lot of the
But traveling.
experts are coming from a Dallas, a Chicago, and now we got air travel. One of the big issues we've had right now, and we're still waiting for an answer from the Supreme Court, is we have this 14-day quarantine rule
When you travel.
when
That's
somebody
right.
travels. So
Right. So what do you do with that?
So if we fly in an expert witness, say from Chicago, on a case, all of a sudden they've got to be quarantined. Do we fly them in 2 weeks early, or do we? Who's going to foot that bill?
Right.
And then experts, they're talking $300, $400 an hour, minus their testifying fees.
Right. Because normally
So-
in normal times you'd bring them in for maybe 2 or 3 days.
Maybe the day, maybe an extra in and
that's
out of
it.
here and stuff like that.
So now you're talking that plus 14 days.
Yes. So, that begs that question. Right.
Yeah.
Are they looking at it like they're coming into a hot spot? Are we looking at it like they just left a hot spot? So we've had a lot of that, and a lot of those discussions and issues start to come up.
And a lot
Now-
of folks may be wondering why, because we've seen maybe some video conferences for maybe preliminary hearings or things like that when someone appears before a judge remotely. But that's not allowed for things like trials in some cases, correct?
Exactly.
You couldn't hook up a Zoom with a guy in Chicago to have him testify at your trial?
Right now, at a trial, no. It still falls under the confrontation clause, which allows the defendant to have the opportunity to, and it says to confront his accuser.
Right.
And we've always had the notion and followed the rules that
That's face-to-face.
even with technology, that means the person has to come in.
I see.
But we have done a lot, and the courts have made a lot of changes, which has been helpful. Right now, whether it's a preliminary hearing, which is the beginning stages of a case, to little hearings here and there, the courts are doing exactly that. We're Zooming, or I think what they use is the Microsoft
Teams
Office,
maybe or something,
Team,
or
or,
Skype or something. Sure,
I was
right.
going to say anymore, my iPad has like 5 of those on it. I never
FaceTime,
know which one it is.
whatever it is. But we'll plug all of them. How's that?
Yeah.
We'll give them all a free plug on the show this morning. but technology can be helpful in some instances, but you still have that darn old Constitution, I guess, that keeps you having to do things certain ways.
And what we're looking at right now, Scott, is the Supreme Court, which of course is over all the courts, and they've, throughout this whole pandemic, they've been putting out, just like the governor's been putting out her stuff, they've been putting out the rules of how the courts are going to operate. And right now they're starting a phase jury trials back in, but they're going to phase it. So like right now, I think the 12th Judicial District, which is like Alamogordo, Ruidoso, that area, they're going to go first. In mid-June, they're going to start back up.
Okay.
And what they're looking for is policies and procedures. So every district court has to put together a plan. And there's been talks of, well, what if we voir dire, or what if we pick a jury and we have everybody come into the local high school gym, so they can keep their social distance and separate and all this. And then from there, we'll narrow it down to this. We're only going to allow this many people. Like one of the rules is that I've seen coming up is nobody goes to the podium to talk. If you're prosecution, you're going to sit at your table. You're not going to leave your table. If you're defense, you're going to sit at yours. You're not going to leave. Jury, we're used to juries being in our little jury panel box. They may see themselves separated.
Right.
Could be all the way
sitting around the courtroom, I suppose.
So every district is looking at rules. Up here, because of our hot zone between Gallup and ourselves, which are still part of the same judicial district, we're the last I heard was mid-July, so about July 15th.
Gotcha.
We may start filing up. So we're at the end of the line when it comes to starting back up. It's going to be crazy, though. I mean, once they start up, it's going to be a zoo for a bit.
And does that impact some of these pending trials then, I guess? Because we know the clock starts ticking, right? And some of these things, when someone gets arrested, or there's certain things along the judicial timeline, I guess, and you have to start or have someone go to trial within a certain amount of time, don't you? Unless there's other circumstances, or are they pretty flexible with that?
Yeah, it comes down to it's our right to speedy trial. And so, over the years...
That darn Constitution again. Jeepers.
Over the years, New Mexico has sort of... the times have changed, and sometimes what we do in New Mexico, and this comes from case law and in the courts, is they've established, if it's a complex case, we sort of expect it to be done in this amount of time. If it's something we consider moderately complex, let's have it done in this amount of time. If it's a simple case, let's have it done in this amount of time. Well, the Supreme Court, when the pandemic first hit, they sort of put out something saying, listen, we're easing up on those. And, yes, it had to be done, but in the same regards, I also am a firm believer in speedy trial. I mean, it's...
Well, I think anybody can understand that if you've got all this stuff going on around you, swirling around you, this pandemic, and try and do things safely, that's one thing. But if you're the guy sitting in a cell waiting for your trial, that's another thing. And that's the whole reason why we have this speedy trial
and it's weird. I think I saw a report, I'm trying to think, it was either Friday or just late last week, that was sort of showing the numbers of incarceration right now. And I mean, the state of New Mexico has cut their incarceration in half almost.
Right.
So.
Now, is that because some folks have been released because of some of the outbreaks in these detention facilities?
Well, we haven't really had an outbreak anywhere. As of this morning, and knock on wood, San Juan County.
I know San Juan County is good.
Yeah,
right?
well,
we've been testing.
We've been testing
and isolating.
They haven't had a report come out, but we're also we're under 50% capacity, which is a good thing. I mean, nobody wants everybody in jail.
Right. But other parts of the country have seen some releases, and so maybe
Big
not
releases.
here. And so, as a prosecutor, how does that make you feel if your folks have done the work to get folks sent away, and now somebody else is releasing those folks?
Well, in New Mexico, it didn't really happen. I think what the governor did is she looked at people that were scheduled in the next 30 days to be released. So if you're talking about people that probably did 99%, 99.8% of their sentence, and even then it was a look at what they were in for. So actually in New Mexico it wasn't huge. I still go back to our bigger problem still is at the beginning stages with the pretrial release and all that. That's where we get annoyed as prosecutors, and nothing more annoying than somebody gets out on a Monday and they're back in by Thursday because of something they did.
Right.
And I'm not talking little things like forgot to call their probation officer. took
Another
a car
crime.
that wasn't theirs,
Yeah.
drove at 100 miles an hour through Farmington, wrecked it. So now I got a victim who's out of car. And that's the other thing on this pandemic that's been really weird for people is the victims. I mean, we've been delegated to just talking over the phone with victims a lot, which, there's something to be said about meeting in person with people. That's been going on. And, not only defendants waiting for their day in trial, victims waiting for their day in trial. So, but I will say this, majority of people we've talked to, majority of victims we've talked to, they've understood what's going on and they've accepted it. We still get some that are pretty angry about this, that, or the other, but majority have really just sat back, and kudos to them, and said, yeah, we understand what's going on. It's fine. We'll call you, you call us.
And as the jury trials start back up again slowly, as you've mentioned, maybe in San Juan County in the month of July, would this other thing may change a little bit? Would you be able to maybe meet more face-to-face in some different situations with some of these victims?
Yeah, we're just going to track it. We're going to see how it goes. Good always comes out of pandemics, too. And by good, I mean we've learned how can we change some best practices? How can we change how we operate? My hope is that the courts actually allow us to do more of this video of all the preliminary stuff, the teleconference and stuff like that, because a great example is it's much more efficient, not only for us, but for the defense as well. And the great example I can give you is if I'm scheduled to be in a court in Aztec and a court in Farmington, one of them is going to have to wait till I get done with the other. And then we're talking about a 25-minute drive. Once I leave the court in Farmington, get to the court in Aztec, get in there and take care of the whatever the hearing's about. Well, you put all that together, it's probably an hour. By the time you've taken care of two cases, it's an hour. With the video conferencing, what we're really seeing is, my phone rings. It's the clerk saying, "Judge is ready for your case." I get on, I do it, and then I'm off 5-10 minutes, versus an hour. And so we've really seen it become more efficient.
And is it more secure, I guess, for the transports from the detention center, if you're not having to do that, if you can just set up a room at the jail to have these defendants appear, and they're not having to be put into a van and driven into the courtroom and then driven back?
Exactly. I mean, we see both economic savings in it, whether it's, miles on a vehicle or price of gas or, whatever it is.
Sure.
We see those economic savings. But, I think the bigger thing we see from it is the efficiency and the timing that goes with it. This always bothers me, and one of these times I want to look at the true numbers, but it's safe to say that one branch of our government in New Mexico, the judicial branch, gets about 6% of the overall budget. So while we're 1/3 of the government, we get such a small pie. So money since the recession for the past 12 years has just been an issue, both for the courts and the court security and how to do stuff, public defenders and district attorneys. We're sort of all clumped into the judicial when it comes to the budget. And, caseloads are crazy. Whether you're a public defender, whether you're a prosecutor, the caseloads the actual attorneys are carrying are just crazy. Public defenders need more people. The prosecutors need more people. It's as simple as that. But the budgets are the budgets.
Right. So. Now, during the last couple of years, we've had some budget surpluses. So that's not the case this year, of course. But did you see any of that at all? I thought you got a little bit more.
I tease. When I first came in 2009, right after that, the recession hit. And so last year was the first year that I actually did. Senator Steve Neville did well. He got me funding for an extra prosecutor, and we increased the budgets and all this stuff. So it was actually a great year. And now with all this happening, special session set here on the 18th in this month, I don't expect too much of a real hard hit, but I fear for the next legislative session because I think that's when we'll really see what the numbers are doing and how the rest of whether schools had to make their changes, things like that. So wouldn't be surprised. I'm back to operating in recession mode. So
Right.
that's where I laugh. I think it was the State Farm commercial where the guy has the fishing pole and
So
dollar
close.
hanging on it going,
So
almost
close.
had it.
That's right.
But
Not so much this year.
yeah.
My guest this morning, District Attorney Rick Tedrow, is here. We are talking about the work in his office during this pandemic. And Mr. Tedrow, it wouldn't be fair to talk to you without asking you about plea bargains. And I know that's kind of the necessary evil, if you don't mind me saying, about having to work with such a big caseload. I mean, if every case you had went to trial, people wouldn't get speedy trials for one, and you would need a lot more judges and a lot more prosecutors and defense attorneys.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times what people may not remember when it comes to pleas and things like that is, an arrest is made on probable cause. A conviction is made on beyond a reasonable doubt. And, there's no way you can sit there and say, well, probable cause means 30%. There's no magical numbers to put on that. But I do like to say probable cause is, a foot off the ground. Reasonable doubt is 10 feet in the air.
Okay.
And so sometimes you just can't get there. I mean, many times it's, we can take domestic violences, for example. They're very hard to prosecute. Many times you have people still in a relationship. Many times the breadwinner for the family may be affected. So in a lot of those situations like that, our goal isn't going to be to throw somebody in jail. Our goal, we'd much rather have the goal be, what does this relationship need? Is it an alcohol problem? Is it a financial problem? What caused the fight? And how can we resolve the fight so that family unit can stay that family unit? So a lot of times, there may be a plea out there that is, okay, number one, most victims still want that relationship. They're not walking away from that relationship. So it becomes, how can we help with that relationship? Is it, okay, fine, you want to avoid jail? You go to counseling for this, this, and this.
And that's what you could offer.
Yes.
I guess, right?
Yes.
Instead of jail.
Exactly. And so a lot of times pleas aren't just thrown out there for, just to get rid of a case. They're thrown out there of how can this help?
Right.
I know a lot of times you hear people talk about repeat offenders. But our courts, I'm sorry, not our courts, our laws aren't set up to handle repeat offenders in New Mexico. They're just not. We have what we call a 3 strikes you're out rule.
Right.
But we never get to it. It's got a window of 10 years on it, is the best way to describe it. So, we're never going to quite get to that. But
Gotcha.
we're just not set up that way in New Mexico.
Right. Understood. Just have a couple minutes remaining this morning. Sure. I wanted to ask you a bit about, and this is more of a national issue than a local issue. I have to preface this by saying that. But we see, with some of the protests and some of the upset, you can certainly see it across our country, the vandalism, the people that are just concerned about police brutality and violence and things along that line. Again, I haven't seen it here. I think our local law enforcement does a great job. But as a prosecutor, the police get a lot of protections, I think constitutional protections on the jobs that they do. And I know the Supreme Court may be looking at that nationally about whether they need that type of immunity or maybe they get too much immunity. Is that something that should be taken a harder look at when we come to cases like we've seen across our country, certainly in Minneapolis and other places?
I
know that's a big question.
Scott,
it's early in the morning.
That is a huge question.
But what
there is. Police officers have immunities while they're in the service.
Doing their job.
Right? Yeah.
On
active, I shouldn't even say on, they could even be off the clock.
Off duty.
They still have the protection if they're acting within their capacities. And one thing that we have given them as a society is we have given them the authority to use lethal force if necessary. And it's as broad as saying if someone's in the act of committing a felony, it's hard to define that. One felony homicide versus one felony bad check. There needs to be a reform. absolutely. I don't think necessarily overall training is the way to go. I mean, that needs to be left up to the locals. The locals need to train with what they think their major problem is. But it's, we have done this, and here's where I always worry about reform is anytime we have a problem in society, we've put it on the backs of the police officers. Nobody wants to deal with the mental health issues. And, Department of Health, they don't want to cover stuff or this or that. So whenever it's time to call on someone to act, we've put it on the backs of our police officers. And we've done this for decades and decades. We've made the police become mental health workers, become counselors, become you name it. And then when something bad happens, it just gets turned on them. And so we as a society, I think, we need to talk to our legislators. We need to talk to our executive, our groups, all these different branches of government and just say, listen, this is what we want police to do. This other stuff needs to be picked up by other branches or other groups or something. Instead, we just keep piling on police officers things that they shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And I don't mean things they shouldn't be doing in a bad way. I mean, we just keep adding and adding to their plates.
Not their priority.
Exactly.
I would say. But I think they're in their line of work, they are encountering more and more of these folks that are suffering from some of these issues that you described.
Yes.
And so I think...
and we've done a great job up here between the sheriff's office and our different cities, Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington. We've done a really good job of teaching and working de-escalation or recognizing a mental health issue and bringing in someone that can try and talk to that person within the force. But you know what? That comes down to money.
Right.
No,
so. That's true. And we've had the dedicated resources from entities like the counties and the cities and the hospital and some others, I think, that have joined forces and cooperatively to fund some of these things.
I always say this, San Juan County, we are not New Mexico in the fact that we do stuff up here. We don't wait for Santa Fe to do stuff. We just sort of get it done.
Then we do stuff together, if you don't mind me saying.
And that's what I mean.
It's not just, Aztec's over here doing their own thing and Farmington's doing their own thing. We join together because we can do more collaboratively.
It's amazing. Like you watch our legislators, a majority of them, they always get a little bit of money at the end of the session that they can use towards projects. Those guys always sit down. And they say, what does San Juan County need? Well, let's prioritize, instead of, I'm going to build a little statue of me in my area, or build a little park. They'll break it down and say, okay, well, we got this bridge or in San Juan County, or we got to fix this ditch, or we got to do this. And that's what I mean. San Juan County, I'll go to these statewide meetings and I'll just hear them talking about all the problems. I'm like, oh, well, we're already doing that.
Right.
We're already dealing with that.
Yeah.
That's a kudos to San Juan County.
The legislators have pooled their money together that they get individually to maybe fund these larger projects that they couldn't do on their own, which I think is great. Well, Ms. Tedrow, we are out of time. I'm sorry to say.
Thank you.
But you have a haircut appointment. Yeah. We can see.
Twyla, if you're watching.
He's on his way.
Save me a seat.
He's on his way right now, going back to get his haircut. But I appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you, Scott. I always enjoy coming in.
Answering my questions, and we will certainly have you back, of course.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. That is District Attorney Rick Tedrow, my guest here on KSJE. And I'll be back with more in just a moment, everybody. The time right now is 8:43. This program on KSJE is supported by Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation, providing a competent, innovative, and caring team of professionals to serve wealth management, trust administration, employee benefit plans, retirement planning, and estate settlement needs. Find out more about Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation at 505-599-0181.